Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about bands. We're going to talk about 100% silicone bands from a company called Vector Athletics, and then we're going to talk about the fabric bands along with some accessories to help you guys when it comes to your band workouts. So let's go ahead and talk about them. First things first, silicone bands. I'd never even heard of these things. I didn't even know they existed. I was on Instagram and I was talking and I was chatting with this guy named Max, and I didn't even know who the heck he was, but we're talking about bands. Next thing you know, he's talking to me about, hey, do you like your crossover symmetry bands? Do you like your TheraBands? And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I like my crossover symmetry bands. And the TheraBands, after a while, they do snap because they're very thin. But then he started talking to me about the fact that he actually has a band company. The company is called Vector Athletics. So he did offer to send me some bands, and I actually almost bought them myself, but I did accept the offer, and he sent me a set of 5 silicone bands along with 4 of the fabric bands and then some accessories as well. He sent me some 8 utility straps along with his Vector grips. So when it comes down to silicone, you can see it's got a nice vibrant color to it, but functionality wise, these things have a nice rounded edge, so you're not going to feel so much discomfort when you're doing your exercises. Because if you look at something like my Rogue bands, they have a small break on the edge, but honestly it still digs into your skin, especially between that index finger and your thumb when you're doing something like a chest press or even doing rows. And it really digs in and feels just a little bit more discomfort compared to something like this that has that nice rounded edge. Silicone bands also have a more gradual resistance, so it's not going to be so much harder when you sit there and start pulling on it like the latex bands. They stretch up to 3 times the resting length. These are 41 inches. And what I really actually like about them, and this can be considered a pro and a con, but there's a point where these bands tell you no. Like, you can't pull this thing anymore. It says no. There's almost like a snap indicator in here. So you get to the point where you just know, like, you can't pull this thing anymore. Now, like I said, this could be a con as well because now you have to adjust when you're doing your exercise. So as long as you are not maxing these things out, it's perfectly fine. But what I like about them is you do know when you've reached the capacity of when they're supposed to stretch. That is going to help when it comes to the wear and tear, and chances are these are going to last a lot longer compared to the latex bands, because the latex bands you can just keep pulling and pulling and pulling until those things snap on you. So I like the fact that they have the rounded edges, vibrant colors, they're hyperallergenic, and they just feel so much better in your hands. Now let's go ahead and talk about the fabric band. So guys, here's the fabric bands, and really the biggest thing when it comes to fabric bands is they're going to be a lot more snap resistant because basically everything is sewn into the fabric itself. These are going to be a lot harder to break. Like I said, snap resistant. You're not going to have to worry about these things snapping and hitting you in the face. But they're also going to have a greater stretch profile. So these things can stretch compared to the latex bands. And overall, they're just going to be stronger. These are made of latex and nylon, and they are very strong. But one of my favorite things about fabric bands compared to silicone or latex, just smoother on your skin. Like when you're doing an exercise, especially something like chest press or whatever, where it's rubbing back and forth on your arms, this is way smoother, and chances are you're not going to have to worry about ripping your arm hair out. So that's one of my biggest things when it comes down to fabric bands. And these, they did a very good job when it comes down to it. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be these Vector grips. Now, these things are really good quality. They're made of very sturdy aluminum. They do have a nice passive knurl on them, so it's going to be nice and grippy when it comes to doing your exercises. And these things are super smooth. There's not a single burr whatsoever when it comes to this product. And that is super important when you're doing anything with bands, because if there's an edge or anything like that, it can cause extra wear and tear and possibly damage your bands. So these are simple. They come in either 42 millimeters or 46 millimeters, and these that I'm holding in my hand are 42 millimeters, and you can kind of see my hands are not the biggest, but they're also not the smallest, and this works perfectly when it comes to my hands. But all you do is you slide the band in between here. Everything is nice and smooth inside, and then you just basically hold it like this and do your exercise. Especially those really thick loop bands, like the ones that I have from Rogue, they're super thick. If you're doing an exercise with those things, not only are the edges on the band uncomfortable, but it's very hard to sometimes hold on to that thick band. So something like this, where the band sits inside this nice smooth aluminum handle, this grip is going to be perfect for doing any type of band workouts. All right, the last accessory we're going to go ahead and talk about are going to be these Vector Athletic, I think they call them 8 utility straps. So you can basically see that these things are reinforced when it comes to the stitching. And you could pretty much take this and you can loop a bunch of bands in there if you wanted to, or you can loop one band and you could do things like rows, you could do bicep curls, triceps. And it's just a nice way of being able to hold on to the band, because these are a lot more comfortable compared to some of the other bands out there, especially those latex bands. So the fact that you can just loop this around, you can do your rows, you can do triceps, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And honestly, it feels really good on your skin. There's definitely some applications where these could be very handy. All right guys, last thing to talk about is going to be the price. So if you want the set of 5 100% silicone bands, we're looking at $74.99. If you guys are interested in the fabric bands because they're nice and smooth on your skin and you might not have to worry about them snapping on you, those are going to be $89.99. And then those accessories, those Vector grips, those are going to be $59.99 for the pair. Otherwise, the 8 utility straps are going to be $39.99 for the pair. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you guys did, make sure you guys hit the like button. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop me a comment. If you guys haven't already, make sure you're going to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Otherwise, catch you guys on the next one. Take care.